You're listening to 17 Carat K-Pop, the podcast that's a little bit of everything with a K-pop twist. From pop culture critiques to the history of K-pop to interviews with people in the K-pop industry and K-pop artists themselves, to concert and album reviews, to a deep dive into the discographies of different K-pop artists, to K-pop news updates, to stories about the music industry more broadly. This show tries to cover everything about K-pop and K-pop as it applies to the larger music and concert scenes. Visit 17caratkpop.weebly.com for more information about the show. That's 17caratkpop.weebly.com. Hello everybody and welcome back to 17 Carat K-Pop and welcome back to another episode of the segment Stay Tuned, which talks less about specific K-pop artists and goings-on in the world of K-pop and more about the music and concert industries more broadly. And today we're going to talk about South Korean entertainment more broadly and how TV, video games, webtoons, all of these parts of South Korean media production are just making such a global splash these days and are poised to do so even more in the future, plus some artificial intelligence related updates that apply to my senior project again. Yes, we're going to talk about that again, but in a new light. Lots more to talk about. Let's just dive right into it with this discussion about a new decision made in South Korean politics. Korea's presidential committee just established the first of its kind set of ethical standards for how you should use artificial intelligence. Because with this advanced technology comes a lot of great opportunity for a better society, but it also comes with the same amount of knowledge that you could use for more nefarious ends as to how you apply that technology. So these ethical guidelines basically are a list of warnings in a way, some things to keep in mind that should drive your research and your use of artificial intelligence. And if you go against those guidelines, it's going to be condemned. It's sort of like what resolutions are in the U.S. government, where, like the Green New Deal, for example, is a proposed resolution here, which is not the same as a bill. It's not legally binding in that way. It's just a document that formalizes a platform that not just a specific political party has, but a platform about a certain topic. Like the Green New Deal is a platform saying, here are our goals, here are our values towards the environment, here's how we want to live a more eco-friendly life, and here are the types of policies we will aim to support to fulfill that mission. These AI for humanity, as it's called, guidelines, are sort of the same. So if you violate the guidelines, it's not like you're going to go to jail for it, but it would be strongly condemned because officially now there are ethics to try to reach while you use artificial intelligence. Their guidelines are based on three main pillars of ethical use: human dignity, public benefit, and rightful purpose of that technology. What was it meant to be used for? And those further break down into 10 other factors that you ought to take into account: human rights, diversity, infringement, privacy, solidarity, data management, safeness, responsibility, transparency, and the pursuit of the greater good. Time for a shameless plug. Remember, I did my senior project in college all about the sociology behind CGI and virtual influencers and how these characters, these virtual characters, are posing as real Instagram influencers and are CGI models, CGI famous faces. They're becoming celebrities of their own. Lil Miquela being the one that you most likely heard of, who has the most Instagram followers, but there are so many of these influencers, literally hundreds at this point. So I did my deep dive sociology investigation into their worlds online and interviews with them and things like that. Yes, I interviewed these CGI characters. All of that content can be read in my report, which is on 17caratkpop.weebly.com. If you go to more, in the drop-down box for more, we'll have a section called either published work or research, depending on what I changed it to, but the report's there. You can also read my shorter, condensed versions of my thoughts on virtualhumans.org or go to my part of that website. I have a profile on Virtual Humans. Just look for Hope. I'm there. I also talk about this in If I Could Turn Back Time, If I Could Find a Way V. In a few other episodes of the show, Miku, Michaela, and More is another episode where I talk about it. Anyway, I've been very invested in this world for a long time, but just for right now, I just want to talk about how we can apply these new ethical standards to those virtual influencers that I looked at for my project. The first factor on this list is human rights. In this case, would be about the actual physical humans that sometimes pose for the inspiration for the look of these digital characters. Some are just designed by the artist entirely, but some are based off of the looks of real people. Shudu is a big example of that. She's well known for it was inspired by an actual woman's look. Shudu is an interesting case because all of the models that came after her from the same agency and creator are also inspired by the looks of real humans and sometimes dolls, because Shudu's original inspiration was a Barbie doll, and that was how her look was modeled after, and a person. So then it gets kind of tricky about what we're talking about being the original inspiration. Was it the doll, a person who actually posed for the Barbie doll way back when the doll first came out? Was it, the layers here to think about who this actually represents and how much the original inspiration needs credit and needs a say in how this image is used. Tying into this is the other factor that I want to talk about next, transparency, because people think Lil Miquela is inspired by the look of a real person. They've accused some specific Instagram influencers of being the image of Lil Miquela, just tweaked a bit here and there, but being the voice of her and everything. But they deny that it's them, and I honestly don't think it's anyone that people have pointed out and suggested it is. I think it's someone behind the curtain that we don't know. It's not like a famous celebrity secretly. I really think it's just somebody that no one really knows. But I wonder if it is that way by everyone's willingness to keep it that way. I hope that the voice of Lil Miquela as a character likes being behind the scenes. If she really does want to show herself to the world and feels like she can't do that, or she'll be in violation of a contract or something like that, that is when I get concerned. So I'm not sure if these influencers are being transparent enough and more aware of the humans behind their inhuman elements. Transparency is also an issue if we look at Miquela's backstory, because at first she really led her followers along for quite a long time, teasing them like, oh, I don't know, am I real? And then eventually she confirmed that she is a CGI character in a CGI world, because people low-key didn't realize at first. Like, wait, I think you're not real, but because there's that uncanny valley theory at play, you can tell just a little bit something's off. But she looks so realistic. In some pictures more than others, but people really debated online for a long time, and that's how Lil Miquela initially got so much publicity and so many followers, just for being so fascinatingly real, and then not being able to show and prove in any way that she was real. So the fact that her realness was a debate, ethical implications of that being a source of her publicity are questionable. Some factors on this list, like privacy and data management, are kind of out of these creators' hands. That is a conversation to have with Facebook, the owner of Instagram, and things like that. Solidarity is an interesting factor on this list that should be taken into account. How much these characters are part of the greater community, for better or for worse. Responsibility and safety, those are things that we don't even have time to talk about today, that we could really spend hours dealing with that, about how these characters are used. But the one I really want to spend time on now is the last factor out of the 10, pursuit of the greater good. And a lot of these CGI characters truly are in pursuit of the greater good, which is a weird sentence, so let me explain. Don't get me wrong, some of these digital influencers are frankly a terrible influence. FN Mecca, I had to stop following him after the project because I had to follow him for the research, and then I just stopped. Some of these digital characters I actually still follow because they're intriguing, or they actually are in pursuit of a greater good, at least comparatively. But FN Mecca I definitely stopped following. He was just he bragged about going to jail and he basically posted like he was an influencer from jail, this digital character, and he was not likable at all, and it was just very weird. Anyway, whoever created him liked to live vicariously through him, I guess, and commit crimes. Pursuit of the greater good, obviously not there, unless the purpose was just solely entertainment, so that's something. Others like Dion, who's one of my favorites, and she actually always posts climate change themed memes, images of her out protesting, stats about climate change, and other causes, just very much she is helping educate viewers in a way they might not otherwise. And so some of these characters are used that way. Ima shares a lot of art from museums around Tokyo, so they can be used for education in art, literature around the world. There's one, Ruby, who I really like, who basically talks about and gives economic lessons, mini PowerPoint slide style, Instagram content, only it's not a PowerPoint slide. I'm just using that example because there are a lot of those accounts these days. But Ruby was one of the first to have that kind of account, and she basically writes these long captions about the colleges she goes on tour to and what economic rings they have, economic degrees and lessons and things like that. So everything from economics to art to even just technology itself to politics. Michaela gets into political discussions and has talked about and promoted Planned Parenthood and things like that. So some of these influencers really are taking on the role of like human activists, only they're digital. So some of them really are helping educate people online, and so they are, you could argue, being used for the greater good. How much good the people behind those digital characters could be doing if they didn't spend so much time working on their virtual characters, that's another debate for another day. But all to say that, like I lay out in my report and repeat again and again about this world of digital characters and artificial intelligence, it's not as scary as it sounds, that this world is becoming more normalized and the lines between physical and virtual worlds are blurring. That's not necessarily cause for alarm. There just needs to be a very, very in-depth and nuanced conversation about the ethical implications from so many facets. There's hours worth of unpacking to do here. Don't write off this virtual influencer trend as just really weird and wrong or really awesome and great, because it's such a mixed bag, and there are just so many layers to it. So these factors are a really interesting way to see how the virtual influencer industry may change going forward. Maybe they will apply these standards to themselves even if they aren't Korea-based. It'll be interesting how far-reaching the effects of these guidelines are or are not. Other sectors of Korea's entertainment economy continue to thrive. The 2020 data is officially in from the Korean Customs Service about exports regarding music and video games and things like that from Korea. The amount of Korean physical album exports in 2017 totaled up to $40 million worth. And in 2019, that went up to $70 million worth of physical albums bought. 2020, $123 million worth of physical album exports. In 2017, Korean albums were exported to 78 different countries around the world, and in 2020 that number rose to 114. Massive growth was also seen in the video industry. Video exports were around $1 million worth in 2017, which rose to $20 million worth in 2019, and $48 million worth in 2020. Korean videos were exported to just 12 countries in 2017, which rose to 39 countries in 2020. And this show, 17 Carat K-Pop, actually currently has an audience in 39 different countries, which is the same number of countries ordering Korean videos, movies, video games, etc. So that's interesting. People around the world have some pretty good taste. Another sector of the Korean entertainment world that is thriving lately is the webtoon industry. The webtoon industry has its 2020 report that summarizes the state of it, just published jointly by the Ministry of Culture, Sports, and Tourism and the Korea Creative Content Agency. They reported that 69% of their revenue this year has come from actual webtoon access being bought, as opposed to like ad deals and things like that. Naver got over 65% of webtoon traffic, which is a search engine type thing popular in Korea. However, a lot of webtoons were also exported. 71% of the surveyed webtoon companies reported an increase in exported webtoons, so more and more people overseas buying access to read these webtoons. And 60% actually reported an increase in sales locally as well throughout the first 6 months of 2020. When people were entering lockdown and in isolation, naturally they wanted to spend more time online and buy entertainment. With the spare money people had worldwide, we want to spend it on Netflix subscriptions or other subscriptions that provide long-term at-home entertainment, and webtoons are perfect for that. 3 details here worth noting. One is that in 2020, over 60% of webtoon authors were women. So if the industry is thriving when more women are writing the comics, we just love to see it. Second thing, only 23% of the webtoon companies surveyed reported getting less advertisement and contract deals than usual in 2020, and nearly 19% actually reported getting more work this year than they expected, often thanks to serializing their stories. The third thing to note, though, is that this comes with a downside, because with more easier access and more of an appetite for reading these webtoons worldwide, that also leads to more of a desire for some to leak that information, to illegally distribute the webtoon content or find a way to access it for free in a not so legal way. Illegal circulation of webtoons was predicted within the past year to have cost the industry around 318 wons worth. Less than 7% of the companies surveyed reported approval of the government's reaction to this illegal distribution. So the government isn't exactly cracking down on this when it happens. Naturally, there are other more pressing issues they're probably addressing right now, but still, less than 7% of webtoon industries feel satisfied with the response to their work getting leaked. In some other more disappointing news regarding the South Korean entertainment world lately, according to the Korean Development Institute, the highest closing rates of all types of Korean entertainment businesses this year have been karaoke lounges and a few other types of businesses. Golf ranges are actually on the list too, which is a bit surprising. But karaoke lounges are one of the top most shuttered entertainment physical buildings that in the entertainment industry in Korea that had to shut down in 2020. If you want to hear more about why that truly is really sad and how much karaoke noraebon is a big part of Korean culture and it sounds like it should be a fun activity to connect with others worldwide more. The cultural significance of this shuttering of karaoke lounges, I break that down more in the episode of the show titled The History of Noraebon. Anyway, Korea had 44,000 karaoke lounges, but combined with golf ranges and the other entertainment industries on this list, 784 of those businesses closed in the past year, 60% more of those businesses than usual in a year. But on the positive side for Korea's entertainment world, Netflix is expanding significantly into Korea. Throughout the past 5 years, Netflix has invested $700 million on Korean movies and TV shows there. And the investment in Seoul and other parts of South Korea is only going to increase because Netflix just leased 2 new production facilities in Seoul. So stay tuned for a lot more exciting South Korean shows through Netflix. The last stat for today that I want to share is just about Spotify streamers globally and their habits in 2020. There was a 108% increase in Spotify listeners listening to podcasts compared to 2019. So I just want to say I'm touched. Thank you all. Last thing I want to talk about today are the upcoming online K-pop concert experiences that we haven't talked about yet. So get out a pen and paper if you want to schedule time to watch these virtual events. Dustin is having a virtual concert January 24th, 9 p.m. Korean time, which is 7 a.m. I believe Central Time. And Must Be is having their show at 2 p.m. Korean time through the same outlet. And that is then 12 a.m., I believe, Central Time. Ravi is having an online concert January 30th. N- has a fan meeting scheduled for 6th and 7th of February. Tentatively, it's going to be both offline and online, and some components will be in person, but of course that's based on what the scene is in terms of social distancing guidelines in Korea and stuff at that time. But the way it's described, it does sound like that one may not be internationally open, even the online component, but I would double check that. March 6th, Twice will have an online Japanese concert called Twice in Wonderland, and that got me thinking maybe that's a hint for the theme of their next comeback. Maybe they will get into Wonderland references or something for their next, maybe just their next Japanese album, but maybe their full Korean comeback. I don't know. We will find out, but that would be very cool, especially because, I'm invested in all the Wonderland symbolism in that world and story. We talked about that in the TXT dedicated episode of the show. another shameless plug. Great Guys have a virtual meet and live performance, which is basically a virtual meet and greet fan sign mixed with an actual concert, Q&A. It's very interactive. It's one of Studio PAV's events. They're known for these super interactive concert events. Anyway, this meet and live will be April 10th, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 8 p.m. Central Time. That is the news roundup for today. Stay tuned for later this week. I have some more 17 talk coming your way, as well as a guide to another K-pop group who I will not reveal until the episode comes out, but stay tuned for that. It's exciting. It'll prepare you for the next comeback they have very, very soon. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you all soon.